22 photographs, 4 cities, 1 face. Claire Ashford didn't see him during the trip. She didn't notice him in Seattle, standing 40 feet away near a flower stall. She didn't see him in Vancouver, outside a bookstore window. She didn't see him on the Oregon coast, across the plaza from a quiet cafe. But he saw her. She discovered it 2 weeks later, scrolling through her camera roll in the safety of her kitchen. That's when the pattern emerged. Same jacket, same posture, same unreadable expression, always distant, always blurred, always there. By the time she reached photo 22, her hands were shaking. He was no longer in the background. He was looking directly at the camera, and in his hand, barely visible, half hidden by his coat, was a phone. Raised, angled toward her. She'd been traveling alone. No itinerary. No social media updates. No one knew where she was. Yet, this man had followed her for 9 days without ever making contact. And when she zoomed in closer, she realized something that made her stomach drop. This wasn't the first time he'd been watching. Before we understand who he was, we need to go back 3 years. To the divorce. To the husband who made her feel watched, even when he wasn't there. Because what Claire thought was paranoia wasn't paranoia at all. It was pattern recognition. Comment below if you've ever felt like someone was following you and you couldn't prove it. And subscribe, because the truth behind these photos is darker than she ever imagined. Claire Ashford was 34 years old in the autumn of 2019. She worked remotely as a freelance graphic designer, lived alone in a modest duplex in Northeast Portland, and had spent the better part of 3 years recovering from a divorce that had quietly unraveled her sense of safety. Her ex-husband, Derek, had been controlling in ways that only became clear in hindsight. He monitored her phone, questioned her friendships, made her feel watched, even when he wasn't in the room. By the time she left him in 2016, Claire had developed habits she couldn't shake. Checking locks twice, avoiding crowded places, deleting her social media accounts. She didn't talk about the marriage much. Therapy helped. Time helped more. By late 2019, she felt like herself again, or at least a version of herself she could live with. The trip was her idea. 2 weeks in November, driving up the coast with no itinerary, no schedule, no one to answer to. She wanted to prove to herself that she could be alone without feeling afraid. She booked cheap motels, ate at diners, took photographs to document the small joys she was learning to notice again. Misty mornings, empty beaches, the weight of solitude that no longer felt suffocating. She didn't post the photos online. She didn't even look at them during the trip. The camera, a Canon she'd bought years ago and barely used, was just a way to hold on to moments she didn't want to forget. It wasn't until mid-December, more than 2 weeks after she'd returned home, that she finally sat down to sort through the images. The first 100 photos were exactly what she expected. Landscapes, storefronts, a bowl of chowder in Astoria. A ferry crossing near the San Juan Islands. Nothing unusual, nothing that triggered alarm. But somewhere around photo 104, a shot of Pike Place Market in Seattle, taken on her 3rd day, she noticed him for the first time. He was standing near a flower stall, maybe 40 feet away, partially turned from the camera. Dark jacket, baseball cap, hands in his pockets. His face was angled just enough that she could make out a profile. Sharp jawline, mid-30s, unremarkable features. He wasn't looking at her, wasn't looking at anything in particular, just standing there, as if waiting. Claire stared at the image for a long moment, then moved on. Coincidence, she thought. A random stranger in a crowded market. But 3 photos later, a shot of the waterfront taken 20 minutes and 2 blocks away, he was there again. Same jacket, same cap. Different background. Her heartbeat quickened. She scrolled faster now, scanning each image with growing focus. Photo 112, outside a coffee shop in Capitol Hill. Photo 118, across the street from the Space Needle. Photo 124, near the ferry terminal in Edmonds, an hour north of Seattle. Always distant, always blurred just enough to make identification difficult, always just barely in frame, as if he'd been cropped out of a composition meant to exclude him. By the time she reached photo 140, a shot taken in Vancouver 2 days later, her hands were trembling. He was standing outside a bookstore window, the same dark jacket now paired with jeans and white sneakers. The angle was different, but the posture was identical, relaxed, patient, unobtrusive. Claire opened a notebook and started writing down every instance: photo number, location, time of day. She cross-referenced them with her travel journal, reconstructing her route with obsessive precision. She'd been alone the entire trip. She hadn't told anyone where she was going, hadn't updated her location on any app, hadn't posted anything publicly. She'd paid cash for most things, used her credit card sparingly, yet this man, whoever he was, had been there. Not once, not twice, 22 times across 4 cities and 9 days. And when she zoomed in on the final photo, taken inside the Portland Art Museum on her last day before heading home, she saw the detail that made her stomach drop. He wasn't looking at the art, he was looking at the lens, and in his right hand, held low against his side, was a phone. The screen was angled toward her. Claire sat back in her chair, the kitchen light suddenly too bright. The silence of her empty house suddenly too loud. Someone had been following her, someone had been watching her, and they'd made sure she would know. Claire didn't sleep that night. She sat at the table until dawn, scrolling through the photos again and again, zooming in until pixels fractured into meaningless shapes. She told herself there had to be an explanation, a logical reason, confirmation bias, pattern recognition gone haywire. The brain was wired to see faces, to find meaning in chaos. But the data didn't lie. She mapped it out on paper. Seattle, November 9th through 11th. Vancouver, November 12th through 14th. Coastal towns, Cannon Beach, Manzanita, Newport, between the 15th and 18th. Portland, November 19th through 21st. The man appeared in locations separated by hours of driving, in cities where she'd made no reservations, no plans, told no one she'd be. She considered calling the police, but what would she say? That a man had been in the background of her vacation photos. That she had no evidence of a crime, no threat, no interaction. That she couldn't even prove it was the same person because the images were too distant, too blurred, too circumstantial. She imagined the conversation, the skeptical questions, the polite dismissal. She'd been through that before, years ago when she'd tried to explain to friends what Derek had been doing. The small invasions that seemed paranoid when spoken aloud. No one believed you until it was too late, until the pattern was undeniable. So instead, she did what she'd learned to do. She investigated alone. First, she reverse image searched every photo containing the man. Nothing. No matches. No social media profiles. No hits on facial recognition databases. She tried cropping and enhancing the images, but the resolution degraded into useless noise. She checked her phone's location history, her email accounts, her cloud storage. No breaches, no anomalies, no signs that her devices had been compromised. Then she went further. She called the motels where she'd stayed, asking if they kept guest logs, if they'd noticed anyone unusual, if there had been complaints. Most couldn't help. Privacy policies, faded memories. One desk clerk in Astoria remembered her. Nice lady, kept to herself, but recalled no one else. She contacted a few of the places where the photos had been taken: the market in Seattle, the bookstore in Vancouver, the museum in Portland. She asked if they had security footage from mid-November. Some said no. Others said the footage had been overwritten weeks ago. One manager asked why she was looking, and Claire hung up before answering. By the end of the first week, she'd hit a wall. No leads, no answers, just 22 photographs and a growing certainty that she wasn't imagining this. Then, on December 19th, she received an email. The subject line was blank. The sender was an address she didn't recognize, a string of random letters and numbers ending in a generic domain. No name, no signature. Just a single sentence in the body of the message. You weren't supposed to notice. Claire stared at the screen, her pulse hammering in her ears. She didn't respond, didn't click any links, didn't open any attachments. She reported the email as spam, blocked the sender, and closed her laptop. But 10 minutes later, another email arrived. Different sender. Same message. You weren't supposed to notice. She blocked that one too. Then another came, and another, all from different addresses, all identical. All arriving within minutes of each other, as if someone were watching her in real time, seeing her delete them, sending more. Claire unplugged her router, turned off her phone, sat in the dark living room with the curtains drawn, trying to steady her breathing. Whoever this was, they knew she'd found the photos. They knew she was looking, and they wanted her to know they were still watching. She didn't leave the house for 3 days. On December 22nd, Claire broke her silence. She called her younger sister, Emily, who lived 2 hours south in Eugene. Emily was the only person Claire trusted completely, the only one who'd believed her about Derek, who'd helped her leave, who'd never once made her feel paranoid or overdramatic. I need you to look at something, Claire said. Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. Emily drove up that afternoon. She sat at the kitchen table while Claire walked her through the timeline, the photos, the locations, the emails. Emily didn't interrupt, didn't dismiss. When Claire finished, Emily leaned back in her chair and exhaled slowly. This is real, Emily said. It wasn't a question. I think so. Have you talked to anyone else? No, I don't know who to trust. Emily pulled out her phone. There's a private investigator I know. Friend of a friend. She used to work in digital forensics. If anyone can trace those emails, I don't want to escalate this, Claire said quickly. What if it makes things worse? Worse than being stalked? Claire didn't answer. She stared at the stack of printed photos on the table, the man's face circled in red ink on each one. Emily reached across and squeezed her hand. Let me send her the photos, just to see what she says. You don't have to commit to anything. Claire nodded. Emily forwarded the images that night. 2 days later, the investigator, a woman named Janet Hollis, called Claire directly. Her voice was calm, professional, unsettling in its lack of reassurance. I enhanced the images as much as I could, Janet said. The man in your photos is deliberately staying out of focus. He knows where cameras are. He knows how to avoid clear identification. That's not accidental. Can you identify him? Not from these images alone, but I did find something else. Claire's chest tightened. What? The metadata on your photos has been altered. What does that mean? Every digital photo contains metadata, GPS coordinates, timestamps, device information. Yours have been tampered with. Someone accessed your camera or your files and edited the data after the photos were taken. Claire felt the room tilt. When? I can't tell exactly, but it was done remotely, probably through a cloud sync or a compromised device. Whoever this is, they have access to your accounts. That's impossible. I changed all my passwords after the divorce. I have two-factor authentication. Did you use the same recovery email for everything? Claire froze. She had. An old Gmail account she'd set up in college and never updated. The same account Derek used to have access to. Oh my God, she whispered. Janet's voice softened. Claire, I think you need to consider that this person isn't a stranger. This level of access, this level of planning, it's someone who knows you. Someone who knows your routines, your habits, your devices. You think it's Derek. I think you need to find out. Claire hung up and sat in the dark kitchen for a long time. Derek. It made sense in the worst possible way. He'd always been obsessive, always needed to know where she was, who she was with. But she'd cut him off completely 3 years ago. Changed her number. Moved. Rebuilt her life from scratch. Unless he'd never really let go. She opened her laptop and searched for him. Social media profiles she'd blocked years ago. Public records, recent activity, it took less than 10 minutes to find his current address. He was living in Seattle, the same city where the man in the photos first appeared. Claire didn't confront Derek. Not yet. Instead, she did something she'd promised herself she'd never do again. She started watching him the way he'd once watched her. She created a fake social media account. Generic name, stock photo, no personal details, and sent him a friend request. To her surprise, he accepted. Within hours, his profile was public, unguarded, almost reckless in its transparency, as photos from his apartment in Capitol Hill, check-ins at restaurants and bars, posts about his job as a software engineer, his weekend hikes, his new girlfriend. Nothing about Claire. Nothing that suggested obsession or surveillance. He looked normal, happy even, but Claire knew better than to trust appearances. She scrolled back through his timeline, looking for gaps, for clues. Then she found it. On November 9th, the first day she'd seen the man in Seattle, Derek had posted a photo from Pike Place Market, the same location, the same day, same time of day, judging by the light. Coincidence? Maybe. But 3 days later, he'd posted from Vancouver, then the coast, then Portland. His travel schedule mirrored hers exactly. Claire's hands shook as she screenshotted the posts. She sent them to Janet, who called back within the hour. "This is enough for a restraining order," Janet said. "Maybe more. You need to go to the police." "And say what? That my ex-husband took a vacation at the same time I did? That he's been monitoring you for years? That he manipulated your devices? That he's harassing you? I don't have proof it's him in the photos. You said yourself the images are too blurred." Janet sighed. "Then let me run a deeper analysis. I have contacts who can pull phone records, cross-reference locations. It'll take time, but how much time? A week, maybe 2. Claire didn't respond. A week felt like an eternity. That night, she received another email. Different sender. Same blank subject line. But this time, the message was different. "I know you're looking for me. Stop." Claire deleted it immediately. Then her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I'm not who you think I am." She blocked the number. Another text arrived seconds later from a different number. "You're looking in the wrong place." Then another. "He didn't send those photos. I did." Claire dropped the phone. Her breath came in short, jagged gasps. She grabbed her laptop, logged into her email, and composed a reply to the last message she'd received. "Who are you?" The response came instantly. "Someone who's been trying to protect you." "From what?" "From the person who's been following you for years. It's not Derek." Claire's vision blurred. "Then who?" The reply took longer this time. 3 minutes. 5. Then, "Check photo 87. Look at the window reflection." Claire pulled up the image. It was from Seattle, taken outside a cafe on her second day. She zoomed in on the window behind the main subject, a blurred reflection of the street, cars, pedestrians. And there, barely visible, was a second figure. Not the man in the other photos. Someone else. A woman, standing directly behind Claire, close enough to touch her. Claire's stomach turned. She scrolled back through the other photos, checking reflections, searching backgrounds. The woman appeared in 4 more images, always close, always behind, always watching. And in photo 22, the final image, taken in the Portland Museum, the woman's face was partially visible in a glass display case. Claire recognized her immediately. It was Emily. Claire didn't call Emily. She didn't confront her. She sat at the table and forced herself to think clearly, methodically, the way she'd learned to survive Derek's manipulations, by trusting her instincts over her emotions. Emily had insisted on seeing the photos. Emily had recommended Janet. Emily had been the first person to validate Claire's fear, to make her feel believed. But now, looking back, Claire realized something she'd missed. Emily had never been surprised. Not once. When Claire showed her the images, Emily had said, "This is real." Not, "Are you sure?" Not, "Maybe you're seeing patterns that aren't there." She'd accepted it immediately. Completely. Because she'd already known. Claire opened her laptop and it pulled up Emily's social media. Her sister didn't post often, but when she did, it was meticulous. Always tagged locations, always timestamps, always aesthetically curated. Claire scrolled back to November 2019. Emily had posted from Eugene throughout Claire's trip. Coffee shops, parks, her apartment, nowhere near the Pacific Northwest. But the timestamps were off, subtle, barely noticeable unless you were looking for inconsistencies. A post from November 10th had metadata showing it was uploaded on November 9th. A photo supposedly taken on November 13th had been geotagged 2 days earlier. Emily had scheduled the post in advance to create an alibi. Claire felt sick. She pulled up her phone records, her real ones, not the ones Emily had access to, and cross-referenced the dates. On November 9th, she'd received a text from Emily. "Hope you're having fun. Be safe." Sent from Eugene. But Claire's phone had pinged a tower in Seattle, and the same tower Emily's phone had connected to. They'd been in the same city at the same time. Claire stood abruptly, knocking over her chair. She grabbed her keys, her phone, her jacket. She didn't know where she was going, but she couldn't stay in the house. She couldn't breathe. She was halfway to her car when her phone rang. Emily's name flashed on the screen. Claire answered. "Hey," Emily said, her voice light, casual. "Just checking in. Haven't heard from you in a few days." "Where are you?" Claire asked. "Home. Why?" "Are you sure?" A pause. Then, "Claire, what's going on?" "I saw the photos. All of them. Including the ones with you in them." Silence. "Emily, I don't know what you're talking about." "You were there. In Seattle, in Vancouver. You followed me." "Claire, I think you need to..." "Why?" Claire's voice broke. "Why would you do this?" Another pause, longer this time. When Emily spoke again, her voice was different. Flat. Cold. Stripped of pretense. "Because I needed you to see him." "See who?" "Derek. He's been following you for years. Since before the divorce. I tried to tell you, but you wouldn't listen. You said I was being paranoid. You said I was projecting. So you stalked me?" "I documented him stalking you. Every city you went to, he was there. I made sure you'd have proof." "That doesn't make sense. The man in the photos isn't Derek." "No," Emily said quietly. "It's not. Because Derek hired someone. A private investigator. I found his emails, his payment records. He's been tracking you for 3 years, Claire. I couldn't let you stay blind to it anymore." Claire's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the driveway. The phone pressed to her ear. "And the emails?" she whispered. "That was me. I had to make sure you kept looking. I knew you'd delete them if they seemed random, so I made them feel threatening. I'm sorry. I didn't know how else to..." "You're lying." "I'm not." "Then show me the evidence. Show me Derek's emails. Show me the payment records." "I can't. He deleted everything. But Janet can..." "Janet doesn't exist, does she?" Silence. "Emily, does she exist?" "She's a friend. She's real. She's helping us. Helping you." Claire hung up. She blocked Emily's number. Blocked every account. Every contact point. Then she sat in the driveway under the porch light and cried for the first time since November. Because she didn't know what was true anymore. She didn't know who to trust. She didn't even know if the danger had ever been real, or if she'd been gaslighted by the one person she thought would never hurt her. The only thing she knew for certain was that someone had been watching her, and they still were. Claire didn't file a police report. She didn't contact Emily again. She didn't hire a real investigator or seek a restraining order. She did something simpler, quieter, and infinitely harder. She deleted the photos. All 183 of them. The ones with the man, the ones with Emily, the landscapes and the coffee shops and the empty beaches. She erased the metadata, wiped the cloud backups, destroyed the SD card. She dismantled the narrative thread by thread until there was nothing left to analyze, nothing left to obsess over. Then she moved. Not far. Just across town, to a different neighborhood, a different duplex, a place Derek had never been, and Emily would never think to look. She changed her phone number, closed her old email accounts, rebuilt her digital life from scratch with new passwords, new security protocols, new layers of privacy she should have implemented years ago. She didn't tell anyone where she was going, not friends, not colleagues, no one. For 6 months, she lived in silence. She worked. She walked. She learned to be alone again without the weight of paranoia pressing on her chest. She stopped checking reflections in windows, stopped scanning crowds for familiar faces, stopped flinching at unknown numbers. In June 2020, she received a handwritten letter. No return address. Postmarked from Eugene. Inside was a single sentence in Emily's handwriting. "I'm sorry, I couldn't make you believe me." Claire read it twice, then burned it in the kitchen sink. She never heard from Emily again. She never saw Derek again. She never found out if the man in the photos was real, or if Emily had fabricated him, or if Derek had truly hired someone, or if the entire thing had been a folie à deux, two sisters locked in a recursive nightmare of surveillance and counter-surveillance until neither could tell protection from predation. But in the end, it didn't matter. Because the scariest part wasn't the stranger in the background, or the emails, or the reflections. It was the realization that the people who claim to protect you can hurt you just as deeply as the ones who mean you harm. That love and control are separated by a line so thin it's almost invisible until you're already on the wrong side of it. Claire never took another photograph. She still travels sometimes, short trips, unplanned routes, no itinerary. But she leaves the camera at home. She doesn't document the moments anymore. She just lives them, unobserved, unrecorded, free from the gaze of anyone who might claim to care. And late at night, when the duplex is dark and the street outside is quiet, she sometimes wonders if somewhere in Seattle or Eugene or Vancouver, someone is still looking at old photos, zooming in on blurred backgrounds, searching for a face they swear they recognize. She wonders if they ever find it. She wonders if she'd want them to. But mostly, she just closes her eyes and reminds herself that the past is only as real as the evidence we keep. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is let it disappear, even if it means you'll never know the truth, even if the truth was never meant to set you free.